Can you be spiritual while continuing to work in the world? Many spiritual people, including me, have this idea that to be truly spiritual, we must work in a spiritual field, like a spiritual teacher, healer, yoga or meditation teacher, and so on. We feel that the world is very materialistic and pulls our attention outward, and that it is not possible to continue working in a normal job and still be spiritual. This is what we have been taught since forever. We are shown images of spiritual people who leave everything and become monks, or move to the mountains or to the rural countryside. The impression we get again and again is that you cannot be both spiritual and have a normal 9 to 5 job, because the 9 to 5 job is unspiritual by definition. But how true is this? I know it is the accepted wisdom, and we all want to become teachers of spirituality or teachers of God. But can you have a job like an accountant or an admin assistant or a programmer or a mid-level manager doing normal office work like attending meetings, filling out forms, doing the normal to and fro of work, and still be spiritual? Is that even possible? I think most people would say no. Because like I said, and it is true to some extent, that the outer world pulls at us, pulls our awareness out towards the world. And in a way, it is correct to say that being spiritual while also working a normal materialistic job is hard. But if you think that you will move to some countryside or mountains and be spiritual there, you are mistaken. Sure, the first few weeks or first months, you're going to be very spiritual. You will meditate for a long time. There will be no distractions. And then you will feel happy. But after some time, two things will happen. One of two things. Either you will fall below the mind, and that's a bad state. It's worse than being materialistic. You will get so bored because there will be no challenges. Or, more likely, you will face internal challenges. Just because the outer world is calm does not mean your inner world will be calm. You will face problems on the inner world. Ultimately, we cannot run from life, because life will not let us go so easily. The bigger question is, can we continue working in the world, living in the world, and still be spiritual? So we live a normal life, whatever we do, our day job, our wife, husband, children, hobbies, friends. We're living the normal life, but we're still spiritual. The Gita talks of karma yoga, which is normally interpreted as doing the work without expecting any rewards, which might be true at a beginning level, but that is not all that karma yoga is. Nowadays, karma yoga is interpreted to be doing social work, helping the poor, helping save the environment, fighting injustice, etc., etc. And while all those things are true and good, and may even be for you, they are by themselves not spiritual. If you look at many of these activists, they are not spiritual or happy people. A case that comes to mind in which some anti-animal experimenting activists dug up the grave of the grandmother of a company that was experimenting on animals. Now, while it is true that experimenting on animals, torturing them, is a unspiritual thing to do, I would say, not horrible, because most people eat meat anyway, so we won't go there. Let's just say unspiritual, because animals are mistreated and abused. So I will admit that it's a bad thing. But digging up the grave of the grandmother of the owner of this company, that's a form of terrorism. That's 1,000,000 times worse. That's going into the horrible category from merely the unspiritual. And that's the problem with most activists and activism. The activists are not spiritual. They're angry people who are using social injustices as an excuse to vent their anger. Their cause might be good, but their methods are unspiritual and no better than the people that they are protesting against. So, being a social worker or a goody two-shoes is not karma yoga, because being unspiritual is not karma yoga. You can be sweeping the floor, cleaning the toilets, and be a better karma yogi than some doctor saving children's life in Africa. Because ultimately it depends on your inner state of mind, how you are working in the world, not what you are doing, but how you are doing it. Your spiritual state matters. Many people who, in India especially, who interpret the Gita, they interpret it according to their own biases. So the social activist types say the Gita recommends doing karma yoga only, doing works in the world. The run away from the world, the monk type says jnana yoga or the knowledge of wisdom is the only path. While some say bhakti yoga or the path of devotion is the only one. All three are mistaken, because Krishna never once says that one path is superior to another, but all three must be followed together. We must work in the world, that is karma yoga, but that must be done from the wisdom of knowing our true self, knowing that we truly are what we truly are, which is not this body, but something beyond it, pure being, pure consciousness. So we have to work in the world, but from an awareness of pure consciousness, and with love and devotion in our hearts. This love and devotion flows naturally when you're connected to your inner being. When you touch the inner self, you feel joyful, you feel peaceful, you feel love and forgiveness. That is the true meaning of Bhakti Yoga. You have to bring this inner love and devotion, which comes from being, comes from God, and we have to spread it into the outer world. So, real Karma Yoga is working in the world, but by knowing who you are from a state of being, not from the ego, but from pure consciousness, and with the kindness, the love and forgiveness that comes from being in a state of forgiveness, from being in a state of pure consciousness. So can we work in the world and still be spiritual? Yes, we have to. There is no other option. Because life will not let us run away. It will not let us hide in some monastery. It will not let us hide in some mountain. It will keep pushing us and challenging us no matter where we hide. We have to work in the world. And what we do doesn't matter. You could be an accountant, a teacher, an office assistant. It doesn't matter. As long as your consciousness, your awareness is focused on the inside. Because all the work is actually inner work. Being outer spiritual has zero or no value unless you're spiritual on the inside. And if you have the inner work, the inner awareness, then you can continue doing the outer work. It doesn't matter what you do in the outer world. Because anything you do will be by definition done by God, by the inner spirit inside of you. This morning, while meditating, I had a realization. It was not a mental realization. It was more of a spiritual insight. Call it a spiritual experience, not experience, or spiritual realization that came to me during meditation. It was very powerful because it stayed with me for a long time. I have a 45-minute drive to work, and I was thinking about this the whole time. The realization was this: if you live the material life, you're destined to be unsatisfied. Because there is no lasting peace, no lasting satisfaction in the outer world. No matter what you do, you will die unsatisfied. When you're on your deathbed, the only thought you will have is, I wish I could have done more, or I wish I could have done things differently, or I wish I could have tried X or not done Y. Even the so-called successful people, rich people, millionaires, die unsatisfied lives. There was a Maharaja in India who had a harem with hundreds of women. And yet he died. When he died, he said his biggest regret was that he had never enjoyed sex, even with hundreds of women. And that is the problem with the material life. No matter what you do, your life will be unsatisfactory, and you will die with your dreams unfulfilled. The problem is that there is so much to do, so much we want to do, but we don't have enough time. And we make the problem worse by holding grudges or getting angry at people or wasting our time chasing things that don't matter. So we can never be satisfied unless, and this was a big realization, unless we are willing to live a divine life, a life that has been wholly spiritualized, a life that was not lived to satisfy the ego, but to satisfy the spirit, the inner being. Call it God, call it pure existence, pure consciousness, being. Only by living your life in the divine can you die with peace, knowing that you have accomplished everything you came for. Our normal life, like I said, will never give us satisfaction. Because our mind can never be satisfied with the material world. It will always want more. More money, more power, more sex, more chocolate, more parties, more of everything. The way out of this conundrum is not to run to the forest and become a monk. Because like I said many times before, the problem is not the outer world, it is in your mind. And wherever you go, you will be taking your mind with you. No, the solution to living a satisfied life, the solution to the problem of the world, in that you want to be spiritual, but the world drags you down. The solution to this is to live a divine life. This is the real essence of karma yoga. And the way you live the divine life is to go inside, to be in touch with your inner being, with God as it were, and let this inner being, this God, flow through you so that your actions are guided by the inner teacher, by the being, by God. If you can do that, and it will require meditation, it will require first that you know you spiritually awaken. That requires knowledge, wisdom, meditation. And it also requires love. Because our being, the God within us, can only flow through us when there is no anger or hate within us. So this is the life that we must live. The divine life. A life not guided by the demands of the ego, which wants more and more and more and more and more. Because if you follow the ego, even if you get everything you want, the ego will always want more. And you will lie on your deathbed thinking, I wish I could have done things differently. If you are rich, you will think, I wish I had spent more time with the family. If you did spend more time with the family, you will think, I wish I had worked harder at my work so I could have made more money. No matter what you do, you will die a life full of regrets. Unless you are living or have been living the divine life, not following the demands of the ego, but rather the dictates of God. God, in this I don't mean the God of your religions, this vengeful, angry God, always willing to punish you. No, I mean your own inner self, the inner teacher, pure existence, pure consciousness, pure spirit. This pure consciousness made of love, joy, and peace. That's what I mean by God. Living the divine life means letting this higher self control our actions. If we can do that, we will die happy because we will have done everything we came here to do. Ultimately, there isn't a lot we can do except accept life as it is. The real satisfied life is not life spent running after money or running away from money to some ashram or mountain top. The real satisfying life is living a normal existence, going to work, spending time with your family, attending meetings, going shopping, the simple life, the simple things that we do and don't care about, like playing with the children, driving to work, walking in a park, going shopping. These simple things can become our meditation if we can live through the divine in us. The universe, the universal spirit, the universal intelligence, it knows everything. It has a plan for us. It knows what our perfect goal is. And our perfect goal is not necessarily becoming the best spiritual teacher or the most influential teacher. Some of the best teachers died unknown because they had no interest in becoming famous. They did not start big ashrams. They did not become millionaires. They did not start TV channels or write best-selling books. And yet, they lived happy. They died happy. And they changed the life of hundreds or thousands of people who met them. They could do that because they were living the divine life. They were living the life that God had planned for them. And like I said, it can be a very simple life. Get up in the morning, spend time with your spouse or children, go to work, be happy at work, do what you're supposed to do, come back, eat your dinner, go for a walk, go to sleep. That's all the meditation you need. And obviously, if you're living the divine life, it's possible that the universe wants you to do something more. It wants you to write a book. It wants you to become a yoga teacher. It wants you to quit your job and be a social worker. And that's perfectly fine, provided it's not your ego that is telling you. How can you know it's not your ego? That's why spiritual self-awareness is important. The Jnana Yoga, or the yoga of wisdom that the Gita teaches. You need wisdom, not bookish knowledge, but wisdom, which comes from meditation, self-awareness. And also you need Bhakti Yoga, or divine love. Because with wisdom and love, you cannot go wrong. You will realize who you are. And you will realize the source of love that is flowing through you. If you can do that, you don't need an occupation that is externally spiritual, like a meditation teacher or a guru, or a writer of spiritual books. The real spirituality is realizing that everything we do is spiritual by default, is the work of God. Everything. People sweeping the streets are doing the work of God. People making coffee in coffee shops are doing the God's work. People driving bus are as spiritual as people teaching yoga. If the bus driver could live an inner life, could touch his inner being, then he or she would be more spiritual than some yoga teacher forcing you to twist like a pretzel and pretend you're becoming enlightened. So our goal is to live a divine life, a life in the service of the universe. And the only way we can do that is by first getting in touch with who we are and realizing that we are not our thoughts. Most people identify with their stream of thinking. They have non-stop thoughts running through their head. A story they tell themselves, oh, I am this, I am that. Oh, I cannot do that, I'm scared of this. Oh, so-and-so doesn't love me because X, Y, Z. I am like this because my mother was like this. These are all bullshit stories you tell yourself. You're not your mind. You're not the thoughts and stories running through your head. You're something bigger. You're the universe. The universe itself is trying to flower through you. It is the universe doing the work through you. And you have to realize this. You're not the one doing the work. It's the universe working through you. It's God working through you. So that whatever you do is holy by default. Cutting the grass is holy or spiritual. Cooking food is spiritual. Driving a car is spiritual. Vacuuming your house is spiritual. Provided you can realize that it's not you who's doing the work, but it's God working through you. I've had these doubts for a long time as well. When I had, since my spiritual awakening, and long before that. Like many people, I wanted to quit my job and become a spiritual teacher. But the problem is, spirituality doesn't pay as well as computer programming. Well, unless you write a best-selling book. But the chances of you writing a best-selling book are the same as winning the lottery. You might as well spend £1 a week buying a lottery ticket. And I spent a lot of time thinking, asking God to help me. How can I become a spiritual teacher? How can I leave my job? And this is the answer I got in meditation. That I am already living the spiritual life. I don't need to put on an orange robe, shave my head, and call myself Swami Gadhanand or something. Swami Donkey Anand. Swami Donkey Kong. The real teaching happens in silence anyway. And it doesn't happen through books or words or videos. It happens when we are quiet. And it can happen anytime. Even when you're walking on the road or driving to work. This is the realization I want you to have as well. It doesn't matter what job you're doing now. It might not be as spiritual as you want. It might not be as well-paying as you want. But it doesn't matter. Even if your job is not successful, it doesn't matter at all. What you are in the outer world does not matter at all. You might be a failed businessman, a school teacher surviving paycheck to paycheck, someone working at a minimum wage job, being forced to work overtime just to survive. But none of that matters. Because ultimately these are all just stories. You are not your body. You're not the stream of thoughts running through your head. You're God. Just that you have forgotten who you are. So let me remind you. This is me reminding you, you are God. You have always been God. Everything you do is spiritual. Everything you do is holy. Everything you do brings light, joy and love to the universe. Everything. So don't worry about finding a spiritual job or about how you can live in the world and still be spiritual. You don't need to do anything. Just go inside and touch the inner being. And let that inner being flower through you. This is the divine life. This is our goal in life. To live a simple, happy, joyful life. And letting the universe work through us. Letting the universe use our body as we want. And not letting the ego interfere. If the universe just wants us to drive a bus, then drive a bus we must. If the universe wants us to be a doctor or a nurse, that's what we must do. But on the other hand, if the universe wants us to be office manager, we must do that as well. You must realize that the universe is not you doing the work. It's the universe working through you. And you can check this for yourself by touching your inner being, your inner teacher, your inner guide. So live the spiritual life, live the divine life, and realize there is nothing to do because you already are what you want to become. You already are God, so you cannot become any more perfect than you are. The goal now is to spread this love, this beauty, this peace of God into the outer world. And the best way to do that is to live a spiritual life, a divine life, a life where every breath you take, every move you make is dedicated to the divine. Thank you for listening, and I hope your life becomes as divine as you are. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for listening. If you want a free course on how to contact your inner teacher, your own spiritual guide, the part of the divine who lives inside of you and is guiding your spiritual progress, then please go to my website, thepathtojoy.org. That is thepathtojoy.org. Thank you.